thinking is that by the time the president were to fire Mueller or take some other step to undercut the investigation, it would be too late to then be coming up with a plan for how are we going to respond. So Democrats have spent more than a year now trying to put in place a really comprehensive strategy that involves legal steps, legislative maneuvers, as well as a major public relations campaign to try to get the message out as quickly as possible and salvage as much of the investigation as they could.
Here's the thing. The president has not fired Robert Mueller. The White House has said Robert Mueller is doing his work. The president clearly doesn't like what Robert Mueller is doing, but he hasn't pulled the trigger yet. Here's what Adam Schiff noted earlier this week, that when the president first threatened to pull John Brennan's security clearance in July, Paul Ryan said he was just trolling. So he says if he attempts to remove special counsel Mueller, congressional Republicans cannot claim they didn't see it coming. Do you have any indication Republicans are actually bracing for this?
That is the million-dollar question here, is how Republicans would respond, whether they are even taking it seriously. We know that other steps that the president has seemed to threaten in the past, such as pulling people's security clearances, House leaders, Republican leaders have said that's not going to happen. Right. McConnell wouldn't let this bill on the floor of the Senate to protect Mueller because he says there's no need. And then the president ends up crossing these lines anyway.
Sahil.
This massively elevates the stakes for control of the House of Representatives. In November, voters get to decide which party they want to make the decision about what happens when Mueller's report eventually comes down. And this is, in all likelihood, going to be a political question. Obviously, the nuclear option there is impeachment if they believe there was high crimes and misdemeanors. Justice Department guidelines are traditionally not to indict a sitting president. Even if they try, the courts could stop them. This is going to, voters get to decide, do they want a party adversarial to President Trump, who's overlooking this, or a party that has essentially stood by him and defended him throughout this?
But, Sean, you have Dick Durbin, who actually, of course, Senator Durbin, who was asked earlier this hour about how Republicans would actually react if something like this happened. I want to play you all what Senator Durbin had to say. Well, we don't have the sound, but he says, the question is among the ranks of Republicans in the U.S., is there a Howard Baker? Is there a person who will step up and say, this is it? I'm going to join with the Democrats and protest what I consider to be an action inconsistent with the laws and rules of the U.S. To answer his question, probably not. Is that fair, Shauna? Or do we know?
I'm not sure there's enough of them to answer his question, but I do think you have seen, especially some Republicans, like, Tennessee Senator Bob Corker, you've seen some Republicans who know they're not going to be in Congress next time around, talk about how important it is actually to make sure Mueller isn't fired, and then they change the subject by saying he hasn't been fired, so let's not talk about this. But those people are out there, and if you talk to Republicans behind the scenes, they know that Mueller getting fired is...
I'm interrupting you rudely in the middle of a sentence. I was hoping you would finish your sentence, but Chuck Schumer is actually on the Senate floor now. We want to take a listen.
Of those two events, Kavanaugh's refusal to say that a president must comply with a duly issued subpoena, and Michael Cohen's implication of the president in a federal crime, makes the danger of Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court abundantly clear. It's a game changer. Should be. A president identified as an unindicted co-conspirator.
All right, Chuck Schumer apparently had just been talking about the president. He's talking about him there. Clearly, though, Democrats are seizing on this news, but they have stayed away so far, Josh, from the word impeachment or from pushing the idea of impeachment. What do you make of that?
Well, we know that early on last year, right after the special counsel was formed, Democrats started doing some polling on this to see how the talk of impeachment would play. And they realized early on that it actually wasn't to their benefit to do that, that a lot of people in both parties felt that it's premature to do that before Mueller has actually laid out the facts. And that's why you're seeing folks like Nancy Pelosi trying to sort of put the kibosh on really talking about impeachment.
Emissions are going down, and this doesn't really change anything.
And Sahil, what you're reporting on, I know, has to deal with sort of the news of the moment, the news of the day, if you will, as we were just learning that another friend of the show, Bob Costa, spoke with the president's lawyer, who told him that he believes that this may mean that Mueller may be at the end now, may be winding down. We've heard that from Rudy a time or two before. What are you hearing from your sources about how Democrats and Republicans may try to use this?
Hallie, my sources are telling me that even though Democrats are planning to ramp up pressure to delay or slow down the Kavanaugh confirmation process in light of the fact that the president has now been implicated in a crime by his former lawyer, Republicans in the Senate are extremely unlikely to go along with that. They are determined to put Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court come what may. One Republican source I spoke to called it a liberal fantasy, the idea of a delay today on the Kavanaugh confirmation, so expect them to move full speed ahead, regardless of the news of Cohen and Manafort.
Sahel, Shauna, Josh, thank you all for coming on the show. Come back soon.
Yeah, of course.
We'll get another busy day. Yeah, chances look good. Today's big picture we end with, as always, comes to us from North Korea, actually. And check this out, another story that kind of got overshadowed with all this. Look at the smiles on these faces. It's a South Korean mother wrapping her arms around her North Korean son for the first time in 65 years. Yep, 6 decades. They had not spoken with or seen each other. They'd been separated after the Korean War. That mom was one of the dozens of South Koreans given a rare chance to cross into North Korea and see family members. But it wasn't permanent. It was only a 3-day reunion. Heart-wrenching, but you can see the hope and the happiness on their faces. This photograph here from the Associated Press. Would love to hear your thoughts, as always, on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. I will be reporting out more of this on NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt. And stand by, too, because I know our unit is working on a lot of reporting on what's happening behind the scenes. We're going to bring that to you later on in the day. Right now, though, I'll turn it over to more news with my colleague, Ali Velshi, who is in New York, paying
Where'd the
very
time
close
go?
attention.
I'm sitting here looking at notes, looking at what senators are saying. I hear my name on TV. It's like, wait, that's me.
Do you want to just fill 30 seconds with me or what?
No, I mean, yes. But I enjoyed yesterday. You and I talked at this time yesterday morning, and then we were still talking at 6 o'clock yesterday evening.
That's
that was
right,
quite
we
a day.
Quite a day is maybe the understatement of the century, Ali Velshi.
That is right. I'm now at least getting to process it today. I've been enjoying your show, and we are going to try and get through making sense of everything that happened yesterday afternoon. And I think I'm going to see you later this afternoon as well. Hallie, have a great rest of your morning. Hallie
Thank you,
Jackson.
you too.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ali Velshi. My colleague Stephanie Rule is off. It's Wednesday, August the 22nd. Let's get smarter.
News on the Russian witch hunt. Where is the collusion? You know, they're still looking for collusion. Where is the collusion? I feel badly for Paul. I must tell you that Paul Manafort's a good man. It doesn't involve me, but I still feel, it's a very sad thing that happened. This has nothing to do with Russian collusion. This is a witch hunt, and it's a disgrace. We continue the witch hunt.
Very clearly, there is no dispute that Donald Trump committed a crime. He directed Michael Cohen to do something that was criminal. Michael Cohen knows information that would be of interest to the special counsel.
Is he hoping for a pardon from President Trump?
Not only is he not hoping for it, he would not accept a pardon.
We all knew that this was going to be used as a hush money kind of payment from campaign finances.
You knew at the time?
Oh, we knew.
The conviction of Paul Manafort is another blow to President Trump and a boost for special counsel Robert Mueller.
Mr. Manafort is disappointed of not getting acquittals all the way through or a complete hung jury on all counts. He is evaluating all of his options at this point.
It's a bad day for the president, and I'm sure he understands that.
It looks like Manafort and Cohen only have more to say, only may cooperate more. This could get worse.
Well, I don't, because I don't think he can be indicted while sitting in office, but we'll just have to see where this all works out.
The heart and soul of this is about collusion with the Russians and obstruction of justice.
The President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump, is named a co-conspirator of a federal crime, and now 5 of President Trump's advisors are convicted criminals. His personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, his campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, his deputy campaign chairman, Rick Gates, his national security advisor, Michael Flynn, and his campaign aide, George Papadopoulos. Headlines around the world shouting, "Trump, hell hour, a dark day for Trump, the darkest day for the presidency since Watergate. Cohen pleads guilty, implicating president. Trump's former lawyer, happy to testify. 2 Trump lieutenants found guilty, president implicated." All right, the president's campaign manager, let's walk over here with me, was found guilty in an Alexandria, Virginia courtroom within minutes of the president's personal lawyer pleading guilty in a New York City courtroom, implicating the president in his crimes. All of it bringing impeachment back to the forefront. Let's take a look at the process of impeachment. First of all, the House of Representatives. Okay, let's do that. Now let's open that up. There we go. All right. First of all, the House of Representatives draws up articles of impeachment. Think of the House as the prosecutor. The document details any, quote, high crimes and misdemeanors that the president is believed to be guilty of. Only the House can bring charges against a president, but any individual congressperson can start this process. Next, the House votes, at least 2/3 of the chamber has to approve the impeachment. 288 votes as it's currently constituted, since there are 4 vacancies in the House right now. This is a high bar, making many impeachment proceedings a bipartisan effort. Neither party can do it on their own. Once the House approves the articles of impeachment, the matter goes to the Senate, which acts more like a courtroom. The Senate tries the case and votes, acting as defense, judge, and jury. Again, the threshold is 2/3, so even half the chamber voting to impeach would still acquit the president. 2/3 of the Senate, 60 as it stands right now, are needed to vote guilty for impeachment. Now, if they do, the president is removed from office. The vice president would then take his place. We have never gotten to this step before, with the Senate acquitting Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton. Richard Nixon resigned before impeachment proceedings could begin. Had he not done that, he would have been impeached. Joining me now, presidential historian John Meacham and president of the National Constitution Center, Jeffrey Rosen. Now, guys, I just want to be clear here. We even have Democratic senators this morning, Tammy Duckworth, Elizabeth Warren, all saying this isn't the time to talk about impeachment. We have other things to talk about. But, Jeff, let me start with you. I heard Alan Dershowitz on with Hallie Jackson a little while ago saying the things that Michael Cohen said he did with the president don't amount to high crimes and misdemeanors. The president actually tweeted out this morning they're not actually a crime. I think the more relevant thing for people who are thinking about this politically is that Michael Cohen admitted to doing something that was designed to influence the outcome of the election, and there are many out there who say maybe the outcome of the election was affected by the fact that these 2 women, Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels, were not able to speak as freely as they otherwise would have had there not been money paid to them.
That's exactly right. And history suggests that not all crimes are high crimes and impeachable, and not all high crimes are necessarily criminal. But remember, the framers said treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. So bribery of a president who was a secret spy or foreign agent to influence an election is the quintessential thing that the framers tried to avoid. But they also believe that the president giving as well as taking a bribe was impeachable. So if, in fact, the president, through his lawyer, bribed Stormy Daniels to keep quiet to influence the election, it's at least arguable, and Democrats will argue, that not only is at the periphery of the impeachment clause, but at the very center of it.
Let's John, think about this from a historical context. We talked about the 3 presidents who had proceedings at least begun against them. Historically, it's a big deal. Right? Republicans in this administration, in Congress, have been reluctant to even criticize the president on things that are much less serious than this. It's unclear whether this is the final straw or this is the bridge that was too far. But the bottom line is it takes a lot for Congress to go down that road of impeachment, or even the steps leading up to impeachment.
And it was supposed to, as Jeff's forgotten more about this than I know, but as James Madison said at the convention, maladministration was not grounds for impeachment. That is, if you disagree with him, the president, on various issues, if you think he's incompetent, that's not necessarily grounds for impeachment. That's what elections are for. So they were at once specific and general in kind of a maddening way in the impeachment clause. It is treason, bribery, other high crimes and misdemeanors. Treason is defined in the Constitution. Bribery is self-evident. High crimes and misdemeanors is something that can be determined by any given Congress in terms of how they, as you laid it out, how they choose to indict the president in the House itself. So it's all certainly arguable. I think that one of the reasons for the temperature rising as rapidly as it has is you now have the president's lawyer saying that he directed him to commit a crime that was in fact bribery. And so whether the House decides that's impeachable has a lot will depend a great deal on who's sitting in the House at that moment. Historically, as you say, it's very rare. It's a nuclear option. Andrew Johnson was impeached, not least because he was a Democrat in a Republican era. He'd been put on the ticket in 1864 by Lincoln to broaden the Republicans' appeal in that tumultuous election. The first impeachment proceeding against Andrew Johnson actually started before 1865 was out, and they ultimately found a pretext for it. President Nixon, it was more of a cover-up in terms of political espionage and abuse of power. And with President Clinton, it was really more about suborning perjury, about the